Hey, Joe.
Hey, Dusty, how are you?
Doing well.
Welcome to the March 1st meeting of Stillwater Planning Commission. I'll call this meeting to order. First item is plans, policy, ordinances for discussion. Resolution PC 2016-1, Stillwater West 51 Development District Project Plan in Increment District Number 2, City of Stillwater. Staff report.
Not staff, but part of the review committee. Planning Commission, my name is John Bartley. Chair, thank you for your time today on this matter. The TIF committee that has been appointed by City Council is comprised of City Councilor Joe Weaver, Planning Commissioner Dusty Lang, Melissa Reams from the City of Stillwater, Russell Bass, Kay Heath, Roger Gose, and myself, John Bartley. Our presentation tonight to discuss the TIF, the proposed TIF, is going to be broken up into three parts. And the first part will be presented by City Attorney John Dorman, talking about the legalities and the creation process. Mr. Dorman.
Good evening. Just for the record, I'm John Dorman, City Attorney. I think I know about everybody on the board. It's been a while since we've done a TIF, about 2 years, and so the commission has changed over a little bit, and it's probably always a good idea to kind of go over what the law is with regard to TIF so that everybody understands what this process is, because this isn't something we do every day, and if you have any questions or anything, we can resolve those this evening. Let's see if I can use PowerPoint. Okay, I gotta go this way. We'll just start at the top. The TIF process, or tax increment financing, is authorized by Article 10, subsection 6 of the Oklahoma Constitution, which authorizes the use of incentives, exemptions, and other forms of relief from taxation to stimulate economic development in areas exhibiting economic stagnation or decline. The Constitution doesn't necessarily define what those things are, but they are taken care of in the next section, which is what's known as the Local Development Act, which is found in 62 OS subsection 850 through 869. And this statute was created pursuant to that constitutional authorization to give cities the opportunity to create tax increment financing districts and using other tax type financing tools to stimulate economic development in areas that are difficult to develop. And so that's essentially what we're working with here. So you're on, I guess my first point is that we are following the statutory and for that matter, the constitutionally mandated process for this purpose. Basically, what the Local Development Act does is it authorizes tax increment financing to stimulate economic development in areas meeting the constitutional criteria. Tax increment financing allows the city to direct the apportionment of certain local taxes to define what's called public project costs, which are basically costs that are necessary to make the project happen. And the definition of public project costs in the state statutes is about 1.5 pages long. And it can encompass everything from property acquisition, the development of public infrastructure, water, sewer facilities, streets, whatever. It's a fairly broad term. So, but realize that you can use these apportionments, these tax apportionments, for the purpose of financing these project costs. The most common form of what we call a TIF district utilizes the portion or increment of ad valorem taxes produced by the increased value of real property. There's approximately 40 TIF districts in the state of Oklahoma right now, and maybe 2 of them are exclusively ad valorem. The one notable one that is not is the one here in Stillwater, and I run my slides the wrong way. The other method of TIF financing is through the use of sales tax revenue generated within the district. And you could use an increment of the sales tax revenue instead of using an increment of the ad valorem. There are some TIF districts that can utilize both ad valorem and sales tax money, but for purposes of what we're doing tonight, we're talking about a 100% sales tax based TIF. So the ad valorem stuff, I'm not going to bother you with tonight. This act authorizes the use of loans and or refunding mechanisms to finance the public project costs, and the city councils are free to establish whatever TIF program works best for the community. The thing that you're going to look at tonight is what is called a project plan. And the way that you establish a tax increment financing district is through the development and approval of the project plan. It specifies the boundaries and the objectives of the project area, or what we call the district, or what you will see in the resolution tonight is referred to as the increment district, and that is the area that would be subject to the requirements of the plan, or where a developer can come in and essentially get an incentive or get some type of exemption or assistance in the development of a project that might not otherwise be possible. The project plan also authorizes the type of projects to be carried out in furtherance of the stated objectives, the estimated project costs, and the method and the sources of financing. And if you should have gotten a copy of the plan. I sent that out to you last week, right after the review committee approved it. And all of these things that are listed here are in that plan. So I'm hoping you've had an opportunity to review that. Going backwards. The initial steps. Basically what's happening, or what has happened is, up to this point, is that the city council will establish through resolution an area that they want to consider for a TIF district. And that has already happened. The city council established one with a resolution late last fall, and for the area that you received the project plan on. And the first thing that happens is that they will appoint what is called a review committee, and Mr. Bartley has already introduced all the members to you. The TIF committee then meets, and they do a number of things, but most importantly what they do is that they make findings and recommendations to the city council regarding the conditions establishing the eligibility of the proposed district, whether the proposed project plan and project will have a financial impact on any taxing jurisdiction within the proposed district, and the appropriateness of the approval of the proposed plan and project. And that is all contained primarily within the report of the Development Review Committee that you should have received along with a copy of the project plan. What I will tell you is that we did diverge from the normal process just a little bit, in that we don't have a specific project to present to you tonight. When we did the project on North Perkins Road, that was the basis for the new Academy store, we had that specific project in mind. In this instance, what Mr. Bartley is going to talk to you about in a minute, you're receiving a TIF district that is capable of having a number of different projects in it. So what you will essentially get is a project plan that meets all of the criteria of the TIF statute, less a specific project for you to approve. So all of those things are spelled out in those two documents that you should have received. The other thing that the review committee does is that it recommends that the project plan be approved, denied, or approved subject to conditions established by the committee. And in the project plan that you received, they recommended that the project plan that the committee had actually worked on itself be approved by you and by the city council. Going backwards again. Just very quickly, in TIF financing, eligibility for a project is determined by what they call a but-for standard, and that is that if the development that you would be looking at would not have occurred but for some type of assistance through, maybe arrears financing, through in-kind financing, through the creation, payment of project costs, things of that nature. So that's the test that's always used by the council to determine whether or not a specific development gets done. The other thing that I know here is the Oklahoma legislature has already previously determined that the entire state of Oklahoma is a blighted area for purposes of the Local Development Act. So they saved you a number of findings that you would normally have to make. And a TIF can be validated upon the finding that an area is currently underdeveloped. So it doesn't have to be an area that's blighted or necessarily bad. It could be an area that's not developing very quickly. It's an area that's not developing to its full potential. So it's those kinds of things. And the finding that the committee made, the review committee made, is that this area that you will be looking at is both undeveloped and underdeveloped. So you're looking at both criteria in this particular instance. As for the Planning Commission, you're the next step in this process, and the Planning Commission, what you're doing is what's happening right now is that you're going to be convening a public hearing to determine whether the project plan conforms with the comprehensive plan and the applicable zoning codes. And that is really the key here. More than anything else, you're going to look at this plan through the lens of, does it meet our comprehensive plan? And if it does, then you can report that back in the resolution that's been provided for your consideration tonight. The Planning Commission can make a recommendation regarding the approval of the plan. You have that right to say, hey, good or bad. But your main job tonight is to focus on, does it comply with the comprehensive plan, the C3 plan that you all worked so hard on in the past years. If you recommend any changes to the plan, then we note those changes, and then we will actually reconvene the review committee, and they have to review it again before it can go on to the city council. The final step in this process will happen next week. There's actually 2 public hearings that have been scheduled, one for the 7th and one for the 21st of March. The first public hearing that the city council will have next Monday night is to provide information and answer questions with regard to the TIF district. Basically, the council will hear a presentation not unlike what you are hearing tonight. And then after that is done, if members of the public will have the ability to come up and ask questions about what's going on out there and what the proposal is. And in that context, then once all of that is done, then the council will wait about 14 days. It will convene a second hearing on the 21st, and then that will be a more traditional type public hearing where people can come forward and basically say, hey, I like this, or hey, this is a terrible idea, or anything in between. So there will be 2 public hearings. Once the council completes that, then it goes into full consideration of the review committee's findings, and then the resolution and the recommendation that you all are being asked to consider tonight. Then the council will make a final determination with regard to the eligibility and necessity for that TIF district, and you can read what's at the end of the page there, but that's essentially what the council will do. If it does approve that, then it will pass an ordinance that will establish the increment district, and it will adopt the project plan, 2 readings as we normally do, and then if all goes well, then sometime towards the end of April, that process would be complete. Questions, comments? I know I went really fast, and I'm sure I skipped over things that you're probably wondering about.
Well, one thing, John, you'd mentioned, undeveloped land, empty land, that kind of thing. But it could also be used for redevelopment, is that correct?
Yes.
Within the district?
Redevelopment, underdevelopment,
Right.
anything to enhance the idea is to stimulate an area that needs a little help.
Gotcha.
So that's what the purpose of this is. Other questions?
So once this is approved, let's say this is all approved, now developer Bob comes in and he wants to do something in that district. Will he come back to us at that point and we would approve that particular project? Or does this give carte blanche or turn it over to someone else from all future projects in that district?
What happens is that if a developer is interested in developing there, then he would come to we would start with the city manager's office, quite frankly, and we would sit down and work through what's called a development agreement. And then that development agreement would be reviewed by the city council.
Okay.
And the council would go through the normal processes of reviewing it and seeing if it meets all the criteria. If it does, then there would be a hearing on it, and then if the council approves it, then it's in place. He can receive the benefits. What you're basically being asked to do is recommend the creation of a tool, because by creating the TIF district, it's a tool that can be used for economic development. It's not the be-all or end-all. It's not, you're not approving the expenditure of the dime here, and neither will the council be when they approve it. It's just to enable the council to have this tool to use if someone does want to come in and develop. So there's no money or no project until the development agreement, so those all come later.
So if they didn't have this, can they do this type of a project on any individual basis, or would it be precluded from them on any individual job, project going forward if they did not have this district?
You could, if you didn't have this district, you wouldn't be able to use the tools that are available under the statute. It would still be possible to do some type of incentive or something for using a program outside of the tax increment financing statute, but if you wouldn't have the ability to use what is
This, okay,
but
I see.
you can certainly use like an arrears type agreement or something like we use in the downtown area, or we have used with, I think, Radford Place. But other than that, no.
Okay.
And a developer doesn't have to use the TIF increment. I mean, they don't have to use that, even though they're developing in that area. If they choose not to come in for a TIF, that's their choice, correct?
That is true.
It doesn't make them have to use the TIF, but if it's something they want to do, which I'm assuming all of them would, but they have the choice. It's not a mandate.
It's something else to use. Like I said, I think a tool is probably the best way to describe it. It's just something else. I know that Tulsa uses a lot of them, and Mr. Kluger and I are familiar with several of those there, and so it helps.
Sure.
Other questions or comments? I can certainly come back and answer your questions later in the meeting if they arise. Thank you.
Any other question? Next presenter.
Our next portion what we want to discuss was really the Planning Commission's role in the overall process. And Mr. Dorman has spelled out the statutory way that this is set up. Now we can kind of talk the real nuts and bolts and what does it really mean. The role of the Planning Commission in this process is to determine, does this concept, does this idea, does this plan meet two things? Does it meet our comprehensive plan, our C3 plan? Cooperative, continuous, comprehensive. I'm already down back on the page. So, does it meet our C3 plan? And does it meet the applicable zoning ordinances that are in place right now? That's really what we need to be looking at. And so on this map representing the comprehensive plan, it's showing what the ideas are for the future in this area. And as a collective whole, the property that's within this proposed TIF district is already in red on this map, which is the plan for it is to be commercial. There's a little bit that's ag, and there's a little bit that's high-density residential. But as a collective whole, it's already planning to be what makes sense for growth is for this to be commercial. So that leads us into zoning. And here's where I'm actually very pleased and happy that our zoning already matches what we think a good use of this property would be. And as you can see from this map, the zoning through the light pink is all commercial general. We have some commercial shopping to the north, and then a little bit of the RTM. So we already have our zoning in place that would cover most anything that would meet the project plan criteria. And any changes that would be necessary would be very slight changes, most likely still within the commercial category. So our findings from the review committee were that it does meet comprehensive plan, or certainly seems to, and that the zoning seems to be in place. And so that is going to be one of the main, that is the main criteria and one of the main findings that this commission is going to be asked to review and decide on. Now, Mr. Dorman did a really good job of explaining the law. And so this next part, what I really want to talk about is what does that really mean in action? Because you all cannot, let me phrase that, if I were in your seat, there's no way that I could completely separate well, comprehensive plan and zoning, and separate that from what is this really? What is this going to look like? Boots on the ground, buildings in the dirt. What will this look like? You can't separate that. I couldn't. And so I want to talk about that just a little bit so you get a feel for what this is, what the positive impacts of it could be, and what are the real end results of development in this area.
John, before we move into that,
Yes.
just for the folks at home mainly, would you kind of give just a brief overview of the area we're talking about? I mean, sometimes the maps are a little tough to see.
You are absolutely spot on. I apologize.
No worries.
And I've jumped back to the zoning map that we have in the presentation. And where we're talking about is along Highway 51 or 6th Street on the west portion of town, on the right-hand side of the map, the farthest right, light pink in commercial general. And I don't remember the address, but from the buildings on the ground, that would be Kobe Plaza right now. To the south is the Tech Park. And then we extend west along Highway 51 from that point to Country Club, and then continue west to Sanger Road.
Correct.
I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. To Ridge, Range. And so it is all the current commercially zoned property contiguous to Highway 51 for 6th Street from Sanger to the city limit line. You'll see on this map that there is a little portion that is light pink on the far left. And that is actually inside the city limits, and it is zoned commercial general. The review committee specifically recommended to not include that portion into this TIF district for multiple reasons, including the infrastructure costs that would take for development. It's so much farther west than the core growth that is there that we wanted to promote the more infill concept. Let's develop the property that is ready for development. We have the infrastructure in place and is more centrally located in the big picture. And knock on wood, development occurs, and that area that may be outside feasible right now, hopefully within 5, 10, 15 years, will become more feasible for development, and it can achieve the growth without this specific TIF. So anyway, we're talking just west of Sanger to Range along Highway 51.
Thank you very much.
Okay, a TIF district. I like analogies and I like to tell stories to explain things. And probably the best way for me to explain a TIF district is to say to you, Chair Booker, let's go get a steak dinner. Now, you may have just thought of, you know what, you're going to get a New York strip and a baked potato. But what I thought of was I'm going to get a filet and some green beans. Now, they're both steak dinners, but they are absolutely different. TIF districts are the same thing. They may have the same title, but you've got to look at the specifics to see what they're really doing. Our TIF district that's being proposed right now is completely different than an ad valorem-based TIF district, the Blue Dome district in Tulsa. There are different criteria, there's a different taxing mechanism, and there are different taxing jurisdictions that are participating. So we need to truly look at our specifics to determine what we're trying to accomplish. But all TIF districts are simply, they're a tool. They're a tool to help promote economic growth within our city. They're a tool to promote increased sales of retail and restaurants. And let's get down to brass tacks. One of the most important aspects of that is an increase in sales tax collection for the city. Our city operates almost exclusively on the collection of sales tax. So an increase in sales tax collection and a decrease in sales tax dollars leaving to go to other communities benefit our entire community, regardless of where an actual outlines on a map for a TIF district may be. It's a tool for economic development. The beauty of a TIF district, as we're proposing, or we have recommended here, and Mr. Gorman alluded to, is we're just giving the outlines. We are giving the parameters of what could be allowable. It's not a mandate of what must be built, a type of structure. It's not a mandate of where it must go specifically within the district. It's simply a tool so that if a developer would like to utilize this reimbursement mechanism, they have to be within this framework, within these rules. Our project plan has limitations on what is eligible, what types, there are businesses that are specifically excluded because the committee found that does not need incentive. We do not need to be promoting the growth of that business in this area. There are other business types, there are other needs that are not occurring, and but for a TIF district have not occurred. And so if you, short version, if you want reimbursement, you've got to play by these rules. It's really that simple for this TIF district. Here's how it's going to work. You all recommend to City Council to approve the TIF district, and City Council puts it into play. A developer at some point is going to come forward with an individual development plan. City Council will have the authority at that point to either approve or deny that specific plan. The committee's recommendation, your recommendation, what City Council does in the next month does not spend a penny. It puts all the control and power into the hands of future city councils that will have the facts, the figures, the tone, and the mood of our community at the time that the request is made. Let's assume that a developer comes in with a plan. City council approves it. That developer's going to build something. After they build it, a store's going to open and sales are going to be made. And guess what? Sales tax is going to be collected. 3.5% is what is collected and remitted to the city of Stillwater. This TIF district allows for up to 1% of that 3.5% to be reimbursed to that developer to pay for those project costs. The city's keeping 2.5%. You have a new store, new sales tax collection, and immediately the city is putting 2.5% in its pocket for the duration of that individual plan. After that plan has been reimbursed in full, the city collects the entire 3.5%. We also, in this plan, have recommended that if there is any increase in the sales tax that the city charges in the future, this does not change. It stays at 1%. There's our map. That's the area we're looking at. It's about, is it approximately, how much is it? 230 acres. How much undeveloped? Ballpark me? 2/3? Undeveloped. She'll come back to me with on that one. Here's what I've got: 2 slides with numbers. And numbers sometimes can get a little squishy and can get a little confusing, and I'm going to do my best to not do that to you. If a new store opens within this TIF district, a development occurs, they lease that space to a retail operation. And if that retail operation has $1 million in sales in a year, now right there, there's squishy 0.1. What does that mean, $1 million in sales? What kind of store does that mean? Is that a Target or is that a lemonade stand? Well, most stores along Main Street, that size of a store, $1 million is within the wheelhouse of what a store of that size would do. So there's my example to you. They do $1 million in sales. The city's going to collect $35,000 in sales tax off of that $1 million. If the agreement had 1% reimbursement, $10,000 a year would be paid back to the developer to pay for those costs. The city's going to put $25,000 a year in new sales tax. Do you know what $25,000 in sales tax means to this city? A new playground. Half a police car. $25,000 can do good things for our community. That's one store, 1 year. I'm not going to blow you up with that slide, but it's in your packet, and it is explaining how we broke down between 100% retail versus 50% retail. It's a very data-intensive slide. The numbers that we use through this functionally had half of the developable space would be retail, half restaurant, and if it was fully developed, well, we cut that in half also. Assuming that we will not have 100% development of this space. Can we get copies of these today?
That wasn't in our packet. That slide is not in our packet.
I'll get that for you. Okay. My last numbers for you. This TIF has zero to do with ad valorem tax. We are not talking about touching ad valorem tax, not taking a penny of real property tax away from the taxing jurisdictions that get your property tax. Right now, approximately 80% of your property tax goes to the school systems, public schools and VOTAC. 10% approximately the county, 2% health department, 8% split up between the cities within our county. Right now, of the 230 acres that are within this proposed TIF district, 117 are vacant. 135 have been developed, and 26 are what we're classifying as underutilized. So 117 are vacant. Vacant land, especially ones that would be in these assessors' world, still deemed agriculture land, does not generate very much in ad valorem taxes. To the point that the 40-acre tract at 6th and Country Club, right in the heart of this TIF district, 2015, $90 in property taxes. 40 acres, right in the heart of this district. I can easily imagine a shopping center, a lifestyle center like Lakeview Point. Lakeview Point, on the other hand, not including the out parcels along Perkins Road, is approximately half the acreage. Last year, it paid $200 and almost $63,000 in property taxes, 80% of which go into our schools. The development of this area not only will help with sales tax collections for the city, but it will help with property tax collections, which will help all of those entities that they do not have access to now. In summation, it's a tool. It's a tool for us to promote economic growth. City Council will always have the authority to make the decision, yes or no. It's going to give more options to our citizens for shopping, for dining. Hopefully it'll keep people from shopping and dining out of town as much. It's a short-term use of 1% of that sales tax collected in that area, resulting in a long-term collection of 3.5%. The TIF Review Committee would recommend to the Planning Commission to accept our findings, to find that the Stillwater West 51 Development District Plan and Incremental District Number 2 proposal is feasible and conforms to the Stillwater C3 plan and zoning district designation, and that we would recommend that you approve Planning Commission Resolution 2016. I'm available for questions.
Any questions?
I've got one.
Yes, ma'am.
So some of the ineligible businesses says motor vehicle sales, hotels, motels. That doesn't mean those couldn't go into those areas, but that they wouldn't be eligible for the TIF funds.
Exactly. This is not a prohibition against those type of businesses. It is simply they would not be eligible for the rebate of sales tax collected.
But then if they were developed there, any sales tax collected from them would still go into the TIF?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thanks.
On the findings and recommendations of the Sales Tax Financing District Committee, it's page 1. A number 2 says, "The level of investment, development, and economic growth desired by the city is difficult, but possible within the project area." Is that to satisfy the statutory requirements from law, or is it difficult in the sense that it's hard, but we want to do other things? I was confused as to the word as to
I was
difficult.
trying to grab the form. Which
A2.
A2, and under the findings, statutory and the state legislature has ruled the entire state is blighted, but it's partially statutory, and the safety net, for lack of a better word, is we always have the but-for test. That if a developer was coming in anyway, it would not be eligible. And within the project plan, and especially, and I think it's the second to last one on our requirements, the next to last paragraph through the project plan really delves into that. A little bit of history on this. Where TIFs, we started looking at using TIFs in the city of Stillwater approximately 4 years ago, out of the concept of we've got to make sure we have a framework and we have a control mechanism if we're going to talk about the reimbursement of sales tax. The downtown bid district has a framework in place. It has rules in place. Prior to that, or outside of downtown, there were no rules in place. It was a very ad hoc, something comes along, what do you want to do with it? The TIF district establishes those rules up front so that the city council is not put in the position of having to go, gosh, do we give an incentive, but what if we lose that development if we don't? They've already got their rules. They know what they got to play with. And so they always have that but-for test, though, as a safety net.
John, just to make the point, I think we all need to understand that this rebate will not go back to the individual retail establishment, that it's actually back to the developer,
Very good.
not the business itself. So I think that's a point we should make.
You're exactly right. This is a developer concept, the developer coming in. Who is putting in the storm sewer? Who is putting in the traffic improvements that are necessary? Those are the type of projects or elements of a project that the TIF money could be used to help finance. And the best part of that, not only is it not going back to an individual store, but to a developer, keep in mind, there's no money that goes to a developer until the development is built, the store has opened, made sales, and remitted sales tax. There is no money up front.
Seems like a minimum risk to the city.
Well, I'll put it this way. This may seem a little crass, and I apologize if it's crass. In a nutshell, what this is I'll make this deal with you. For every $3.50 you give me, I'll give you $1 back. I'll make that deal all day long.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have another presenter? Is that it?
You made it. I did just do that.
Public hearing is the next thing on the agenda. Let me open the public hearing. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on this particular item? Is there anybody here that'd like to speak on this particular item? Not seeing anyone that would like to speak on this particular item, I'll close the public hearing.
Yes, thank you. Y'all have before you the alternatives in your report for consideration this evening. Alternative 1 is accept the TIF Review Committee findings and recommendations. Find that the Stillwater West 51 District Project Plan and Increment District Number 2 proposal is feasible, conforms to the master plan and the applicable zoning district designations, and approve Planning Commission Resolution 2016-1. Those are, I will pull up the slide again, because that is reflected in the slide. Give me just a moment and let me get there. Alternative 2 would be to find that an amendment is necessary to any of the documents that were included in your packet. And alternative 3 would be to find that the project plan and increment district number 2 proposal is not feasible, does not conform to the Stillwater C3 plan or the zoning district designation, and do not approve the planning commission resolution, therefore recommending that the city council not approve this recommendation and findings from the TIF Review Committee. So those are the alternatives that you have before you this evening. As Mr. Bartley covered, the Review Committee is presenting what you see on the screen for approval of these and passage of the resolution as well as the identified findings.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Before we get into our comment period ourselves, I'd like to personally thank the review board. Lots of volunteer hours, lots of hard work. I'd also like to thank the staff because they do lots and lots of work. The city attorney said the planning commission does a lot of work on the C3 plan. It's nothing compared to the staff and all the work that they do to get it in front of us in a very professional format, and I appreciate it very, very much. So let's open it up in terms of discussion, consideration, and possible action.
Well, I'd like to reiterate, having been part of that committee, I did see the time that was spent, not only by the other committee members, but by staff. And again, I think we all have a tendency to not see what goes on behind the scenes sometimes and how much actual work goes on. So I do appreciate everyone's hard work on this as well. Just comment-wise, I believe that this is another tool for the economic development department to use, to help bring in, hopefully, quality commercial development to the west side of town. I feel like that area is not developed maybe as quickly as some of the residents that live out there for sure would like to see, and also just to help bring in more tax dollars to help with some of these, like John had mentioned, parks or other, quality of life things that we'd like to see in our town. So, obviously, having been a part of the committee as well, I'm definitely in favor of it. Thank you.
Makes a lot of sense to me and seems it's very pro-Stillwater. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't definitely be in favor of this.
Any other comments?
I
Do I hear a motion?
I think if the main consideration is whether it fits with the C3 plan and makes sense with the zoning, then I would say absolutely.
You want to make a motion?
Sure. I will make a motion to accept the TIF committee findings and recommendations and find that the Stillwater West 51 Development District Plan and Increment District Number 2 proposal is feasible and conforms to the master plan, and recommend to approve the resolution 2016-1.
Your second.
Second.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next item is approval of regular meeting summary of February 16, 2016. Do you hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second? Your second?
Second.
Motion passes. The next planning commission is scheduled for March 15, 2016. Do you hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.